Thanks for joining. I'm Lexi, part of the Auggie events team. Auggie is the #1 platform for parents to find community, share recommendations, and learn from experts. So today we're joined by Naomi from Little Crown Interiors to learn about nursery design, which will be super exciting. If any questions come up during it, please put them in the chat, and then we can answer them throughout or also a Q&A at the end. So if you want to kick it off, Naomi.
Awesome, yeah. And just to follow up on that, so this presentation is going to be focused pretty much on that first 3 to 4 months of that transition time. But if you have questions about, like I know someone in the chat said they have a 1-year-old, you're more than welcome to ask questions for that age group as well. All right, so let me just share my screen real quick. And 1 second, I will get it into full screen. Okay, can you see the presentation, Lexi?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, great. So this is a PDF presentation as well. So I will be sending this out to participants, and you'll see things in the presentation that are clickable. So I'll get more into that, but you'll have a copy of this as well. So don't worry about remembering every little thing. So quick little bit about me. I'm the founder of Little Crown Interiors, and we started in 2008. And it's an interior design studio just for nurseries and children's rooms and playrooms. And then I also released a nursery design book, Your Perfect Nursery, back in 2021, which was a big project. Let's see. And then we do lots of different design services, whether they're local here in Southern California or virtual. We do a ton of virtual now. So that's my background. So I am about 18 years in now. It's been forever. So, all right, we're going to talk about nursery design from the beginning. So the reason that this is so important, aside from aesthetics, of course, is the transition of this time is so, it can be really tricky for people to navigate. So I feel like one of the things that I love working with clients on is kind of preparing them for what's coming and how to deal with having a new human in their life. You'll be learning the habits of this new child. You'll be learning new habits about how you interact with your partner and any other caregivers in the home. And of course, how to take care of yourself physically and emotionally. So there's a lot going on aside from just designing a nursery. All right, so having a safe place for the baby to sleep is, of course, first and foremost important. If you don't have anything else in the nursery, having a safe place to sleep is all you really need. So there's a few things to consider here, especially in the beginning, before you even really know all of your habits and the baby's habits. Things like, do you have stairs in the home where your bedroom is in relation to the nursery, and who are going to be the care providers? Specifically, do you need a place for, either that hired care provider or family member to sleep? What are those kind of, how's that going to get navigated in your home? The reason I bring up stairs is because a lot of clients, if they have the nursery and the primary bedroom on different floors, it can sometimes become an issue if you're healing, if you're having trouble climbing stairs and you're, having the baby apart from you when you're not physically able to go up and down stairs. So just think about those things in advance, and we'll get more into it. Okay, so most families are going to end up with a bassinet over a traditional crib for those first few months. Even if they already have a crib and a whole separate nursery, the bassinet is usually where the baby lives for those first 3-4 months. And there's a couple of different things to consider here as far as placement goes. So most parents are prepared for having a bassinet or co-sleeper of some type in their bedroom next to the bed. That's of course great. So you can easily feed in the middle of the night. You can pick up on if there's anything that the baby needs much easier. But depending on the layout of your home, some people also choose to have a secondary bassinet in the main living area. So this can be really great, especially for two-story homes. So the baby's asleep in the primary nursery and you need to move them into the living room or kitchen where you are. You can't just pick up that bassinet and carry it down the stairs because they're huge. So having a secondary bassinet, just an inexpensive one downstairs, can be great. And I love specifically bassinets with wheels, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Um, and it also, if you're having a care provider who is someone other than yourself, if they're in a different room, a guest room or something, having the bassinet or a second bassinet even near them can be an option, or at least figuring out how to move them throughout your space, considering those stairs as well. So there's a lot of kind of moving parts here, but I think if you just kind of plan it a little bit, you'll be in good shape. And having a secondary bassinet is more than likely going to be helpful for almost everybody. Okay, so these are some of the types of bassinets, and there's a lot there's a surprising amount of different types, but the main ones are the high-tech versions. So this is like the snoo and the halo. These are the ones that have tech features in them, or they vibrate, they rock, they move up and down. A lot of people are going with this type these days. They're very popular. They do have some pros, of course, which is those really cool features. But the cons are that they are very heavy and difficult to move. So hence, not being able to just pick it up and bring it downstairs. If you go with a snoo or a halo, think of it as a more or less permanent fixture. It's gonna stay where it stays. And they do need to be plugged in because they do have electrical features. So that's just something to consider when you're planning for which bassinet to get. And there's one other note here where some of these high-tech versions tend to be controversial as far as how they affect sleep patterns. So I'm not a sleep expert, so I can't say definitively if it's good or bad, but there are arguments on both sides, just a heads up there. So there may be a little bit more research involved if you want to look at something like this newer Halo. Okay, on wheels, the mobile bassinets, these are the ones I definitely recommend for a downstairs or like a living room kitchen bassinet, especially if you have wood floors, because you can just put the baby in there when you're in that space and just move them around wherever you need to go. Uh, it's really handy, and most of these ones on wheels that are linked here, this is clickable. Um, are not expensive. They don't have tech in them. They're just, most of them are pretty simply made. So I highly recommend one of these if you have a two-story home or a larger home, or just want something aside from what you have in your bedroom. And then, of course, there's co-sleepers, and these are specifically made to kind of butt up against the bed. Some of them have like a little side that drops down, and these are usually a little easier for breastfeeding access or general feeding access. Some people like the closeness without the kind of rail in between. So there's some options to consider, of course. These here over on the left are just some recommendations, but there's a lot out there. One note on safety, if you do plan on borrowing or renting a bassinet, make sure that it is totally safe and has all of its parts, that the structural integrity is still intact, because if there's any damage to it at all, even if it's damage you can't see, it's not going to be safe anymore. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the nursery. So even like I said, if you have your bassinet set up, you still may also have your nursery kind of ready to go. And some parents do end up using the nursery in the first few months. So I like to focus on the essentials during this time. And of course, safety and then flexibility is going to be great while you're getting used to each other and your whole new dynamic. All right, so the crib placement is going to be the most important thing here as far as safety goes. So I'm in California, so we have extra safety measures here with earthquakes and such. But I think that a lot of people don't realize that that still really applies anywhere that you live. So just because you don't have earthquakes doesn't mean that you might not have high winds or a kid who hits a baseball through your window. So regardless of where you live, I would still adhere to all of these rules. So you'll want to keep the crib away from a window. Again, breaking glass, however that happens, and also sunlight. So you don't want a stream of heavy sunlight hitting where the baby's sleeping because that can actually cause overheating or even sunburn in some cases. So make sure you're not near windows, especially not directly underneath one. And you'll want to also keep other large furniture away. This is something that comes into play a little bit later, but if you have, like an ottoman or something right next to the crib, the child eventually can use that to climb out of the crib. So especially once they reach that age where they're starting to pull around in there, move everything out of the way so that they can't reach anything when they stick their arm out. And then visible from the doorway, this is more of a functionality issue. So if you place the crib in a way that you can see it from the hallway, um, with the door open, you won't have to enter the room and turn to see the baby. So this can just be helpful for kind of quick peeking in, and there's less risk of waking the baby if you have to open the door and walk inside, maybe trip on something on your way. So that's not a must have, but just something that can be helpful in some families. And this note here at the bottom, in the nursery, if you are having a guest or a care provider or somebody who's staying with you for a short period of time, you might also want to think about having space in there for a little fold away bed or even a full day bed if you have space. With my clients, this comes up all the time. So just something I like to bring up in advance in case that's something you're planning on doing. Just make sure you have somewhere for an adult to sleep if that's your plan. All right, window treatment. So this is a tricky one. So as with protecting the glass and light that we just talked about from the crib, light protection is important also for sleep. So it's, of course, good for safety as well, keeping the heat and the light out, but it's going to affect the child's sleep as well. Um, Sleep is one of those things. I mean, like I said, I'm not a sleep expert, and there are differing views on sleep training with regard to blackout versus non-blackout. And you can talk to a sleep expert about that, or you can do your own research and kind of decide what program you want to go with. But in general, I like to suggest that parents have options for either. So let's say that you decide, okay, I'm gonna go with no blackouts. I want my baby to learn how to sleep with some light filtering in the room. But then when it comes down to it, the baby absolutely will not sleep if there's light. So this can happen. So I like to have the option of a blackout, even if you don't necessarily need it all the time because if it's been a few days with no sleep between yourself and the baby, that can be pretty terrible. So drapery is a great option for blackout because you can do a double layer, you can do a semi sheer and then a blackout on top, and you can kind of use whatever you need. Um, and you can do the same with shades. So in this picture on the left, it's actually really difficult to see, but there's two layers here. So there's one underneath that's blackout, and the one on top is kind of a light filtering shade. So you have options for both. And if you do any type of shade, you want to make sure that you have what's called a continuous chain or cordless. So what you don't want is any dangling cords because those can, of course, become a safety issue down the line. So be very careful with your cords. And same thing goes with blinds or any other type of roman or anything. Just check for cords. There is something called a cleat. It's a little plastic thing that you can install on your window to wrap a cord around, and it goes high up on the window. So that is an option if you already have something like blinds installed and you don't want to tear them out, there are options for making them safer. Okay, and you'll need some type of changing station, regardless if you have a full nursery or not. Um, and there are lots of options for this, from a full designed, changing table like in the photo, or just even throwing down a blanket on your bed. Um, you can use any dresser. So I think for new parents, sometimes there's confusion between what is a changing table versus a dresser. And basically, a changing table is just a dresser with a changing pad on it. Sometimes you'll see um, changing tables that have a tray, and that is usually a removable piece, and then you just have a regular dresser underneath. So the trays are largely decorative. You don't need one of those. They just look nice, and people sometimes like to kind of secure the changing pad inside of it. But really, any dresser, any surface is going to work to use for a changing table. If you do use a dresser, I recommend strapping it to the wall. This, again, down the line, you just want to make sure that any of your heavy furniture can be or won't be movable. So if they pull out the drawers to try and climb up onto it, it's not going to tip forward. Um, okay, and then there's types of changing pads as well. This is an interesting one. So in this photo, this is a foam changing pad. It's squishy. And there's also these newer ones that are silicone based. You may have seen around the Kikaroo. Skip Hop has one. There's a lot of different ones, and they're harder silicone that you can wipe without having to put a fabric cover on it. So a lot of parents are loving those, but they can be cold to the touch. So some parents, when you put the baby on there, their baby will kind of start to scream because of that cold surface. So depending on where you live and your humidity level and what sensitivity your child has, the silicone ones are hit or miss sometimes. There is a third option that is a little harder to find, but it is a hybrid of the two. So I don't have that linked in here because it's new, but you can Google it, just hybrid changing pad, and it looks like a foam pad, but it's wipeable and squishy. And then, of course, the portable ones, which are just a little fold out that you can put in your car, or you can just throw it on the floor or a bed, or just any surface will do, especially in an emergency. I'm sure every parent has been through that. And then a couple other things that you'll want in the beginning, the diaper pail of some kind, whatever that means to you. Some people will get an actual diaper pail. Some people will just use a trash can and empty that every day. I recommend a hamper because there's going to be a lot of laundry, and some type of diaper caddy. I love having a caddy, again, in the other space. So your living kitchen area, having a separate diaper caddy there can be great, because if there's a blowout in that space, you won't have to run all the way to the nursery to get what you need to clean that up. Okay, and monitors. So monitoring is probably one of the most important safety features a nursery can have, because not only does it allow you to view the baby, it allows you to acclimate to their habits. So the more that you can pay attention to what they're doing and how they're moving, the more you're going to be able to anticipate future safety hazards. Um, so there's two main types of monitors, and there are just a ton of monitors out there. But the two kind of categories are Wi-Fi and radio frequency. So Wi-Fi is the one shown in both of these images. One is wall mounted and one is on a floor stand, and that is the Nanit. So it's going to run through your phone. It's going to have an app on your phone and use your Wi-Fi system in home. They can be great when traveling, so you can kind of check in, you can share it with other family members. Some families, however, are uncomfortable with that. So they'll go with the radio frequency base, which essentially work like a walkie-talkie. And there's a ton of these as well. These are the ones that you'll see that have a physical screen that comes with the monitor. So it's not going to work on your phone, but you'll have a little screen to carry around. These do have higher range. If you walk outside with it in your hand, you'll have higher range rather than walking outside with Wi-Fi. But the Wi-Fi is just going to connect to cellular, so works both ways. And again, there is a hybrid option. There's two right now that are fairly new, the Harbor and the Eufy E21. These are going to do both radio frequency and Wi-Fi, but they're not perfect, at least not yet, and generally pretty expensive, at least the Harbor is. So I like to recommend something that's going to have less features, but better quality. If there's 100 features that you're never going to use, and the main video isn't reliable, then I would say, what's the point of that? So look for something that has really good, consistent reviews and doesn't have kind of fluff features.
I have a quick
And
question on this, if you don't mind.
yes,
That's come
please.
up for me. So we have the Nanit, and
Uh-huh.
I know this is such a bad safety thing. The outlet for it is right behind the crib. And now that
Mm-hmm.
it's been below where she's been sleeping. Now that she's one, we've lowered the crib and the plug is right there. And now she's interested in sticking her hand out. So I don't know if you have
Okay.
any solutions for this. And the crib we have is the nested wave, so it doesn't have a backing.
It's open on the back. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have in this picture on the right here, there's a raceway? Do you have that cord cover?
We have this stand one.
Oh, you've got the floor stand.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And you have it behind the crib.
Yeah, but the outlet kind of like
Okay.
comes up.
So
So
I would recommend then, so basically what is in this picture, this cord cover, that's a wall mounted cord cover, but you can also get them that attach to the baseboard. So
okay.
I would recommend getting one of those and just looping your cord into it and then kind of diverting it out to the side along the baseboard to
Yeah.
where the floor stand goes. So that way, even if she reaches, she's not going to be able to get the cord. She'll just, because that
What
raceway
about
will
the
be
problem
stuck
is
to a
it's the
wall.
actual outlet, like where it's
You can
the
get an outlet lock system. So
okay.
they make these big kind of covers. It's basically like a plastic box that just covers the entire thing, including
Okay.
the piece that's plugged in. They're a little bit bulky, so you'll probably have to move the crib away from the wall like 3 inches to make space
Okay.
for it. Um, and so then that cord will just come out a tiny bit, and then you can put your cord cover and it'll just go out to the side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that I think that's
Yeah,
exactly.
there's a ton of them on Amazon. You'll just want to make sure that the installation of the cover works with the type of outlet that you have.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. It's like a resource
Yeah, of
for
course.
you.
Okay. So I love to talk about airflow in the nursery because this is something that can get overlooked as a safety feature. So nurseries have some of the worst air in the home. I'm sure you can imagine why. So that air needs to be cleaned more often than it would in a normal bedroom. There are a lot of air purifiers out there, and this is the one that I like the best. It's called the Serenity. But this is an air purifier. So there's also humidifiers. So a humidifier is going to add moisture to the air, and that helps with breathing and congestion. Um, the humidifier is something you might want to talk to your pediatrician about as far as when they need it, how close to them to place it. But humidifiers have a problem of growing mold. It's just something that happens when you have water that's being put through a system with heat. Uh, so if you get a humidifier, it's going to need to be cleaned regularly. And sometimes you can't even access the parts that need to be cleaned. So Canopy is one that I do like because they have materials that don't grow mold as much, and you can actually take it apart. So you can access the areas that do need to be cleaned. And then air purifiers is what's going to push your air through a filter to remove contaminants and toxins and VOCs from the air. So this one, again, there's so many of these and they're all going to have a ton of features. But I like this one because it also functions as a noise machine, and it has, if you can see, a light on here that has different colors. And you can control it with your phone. So even if you're not in the room, you can turn it on or off. You can check the air quality. It's just something that's nice to have. If it's not this one, any brand will more or less suffice. You'll just have to kind of test the filters to make sure that, when they get full, you have to replace those. So highly recommend an air purifier. The only thing with purifiers is they're generally on the larger side and they do take up space. So when you're in the planning phase of your nursery, make sure you have a spot for it to go, because they usually need to sit on the floor. All right, storage, the ever elusive storage. So babies come with a ton of stuff, and it's just part of how it goes, and finding the right solution to store all of these items and change that over time can be a little daunting for people. So this is where I love to stress flexibility, because you're going to go from teeny tiny things to much bigger things very quickly. And this isn't just clothes. We're talking about toys, and you're going to have big teepees and all kinds of bulky big things that children tend to accumulate, and having space for those somewhere, whether it's in a closet or a garage, can be really helpful if you plan for that in advance. So a lot of clients want to kind of do the full custom closet redo. And I actually advise against that, because A, it's super expensive, and B, you have no idea what your needs are going to be in a year from now and 2 years from now. And if you spend $5,000 building out a custom closet, you can't change it easily. So I actually recommend flexible modular closet spaces if you can in the beginning, and just adjusting it as you need it. You can get an extra wardrobe bar, a tension bar pretty easily. Just get little bins that fit in that you can move around. And of course, space for things that you just don't know what they're going to be yet. Other in-room storage. So this is for nursery. Aside from the closet, you're going to have your dresser, of course. And then storage bins with lids. The lid is so great because you can just toss stuff in there, put the lid on it, and not think about it. I like to also recommend teaching your children very early how to do that, so they know how to throw things in the bin and put the lid on. And then adding storage wherever you can. So a storage ottoman is great. If you're already going to get an ottoman, may as well have storage inside of it. And then wall shelves, bookcase, anything that you have space for. Some types of cribs even have space for like bins that go underneath. It's, there's always a need for storage, and hardly anyone has space for everything. I've worked in some homes that are massive and there's still somehow always a storage problem. And your dresser drawers, of course, if you want to get, these drawer organizers to help you kind of put things in there and organize. I like the flexible ones, of course, the ones that you can adjust and move around. Those are great. Okay, and lastly, we're going to talk about actually creating a nursery nook in the primary bedroom. So this is the next step beyond having a bassinet in the bedroom. Some people like to actually create a little mini nursery in this space. So basically what we do here is the main things that we've already talked about: a safe place to sleep, a monitoring system, and some place for changing. It's just making sure you have space for those three things in your bedroom. As far as sleeping space, this does not have to be a full-size crib. In this image, this is a mini crib, so it's going to be a much smaller footprint. This works great in smaller places, like my New York clients, we do a lot of mini cribs. Um, and then you can also use your bassinet in that time. And then, of course, putting your monitor in that area and then creating some place to change them. You don't necessarily need a separate dresser. You can just use the bed. You can use your existing dresser. There's lots of different options here too, but you will want some type of diaper disposal option. So it's really not that much stuff to do. Of course, this one, has some cute decor and stuff, and you can always add that in. The pillows in the crib is not a good idea. That's just for styling from this photo. And then, of course, if you have any extra space, again, that lidded hamper, I'm such a huge fan of these. If you can fit one in there, they're great to have. And then I just included a couple special discounts for everybody, and you'll get a copy of this from a few brands that I mentioned. This is actually the hybrid changing pad that I had mentioned, the Gilded Bird here. And then there's some other brands that I like a lot. And lastly, if you are looking for more information, both on functionality and on aesthetics, you can get that in my book, which is available anywhere. And that is it for me. So we can jump into Q&A whenever you're ready to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If
Yeah,
anyone has
absolutely.
questions at any time, please speak up or drop them in the chat, whatever works. I loved the tip about making sure the crib is visible from the doorway if you can. It's something I wouldn't have even thought about, but it's so important to do.
It just comes in
Like,
handy.
yeah, you wouldn't even think.
Yeah.
You just want to pop
And of
in.
course, that's for cribs that are open on the side. So if you buy a crib that has a solid side panel, it's not going to do you any good. But like the one you have, the nest egg, that one's open on the
Yeah,
side. So yeah,
but that one's been great being able to go from mini to full size, being in New York.
especially, yep, in the smaller apartments. Yep.
Yeah.
Those are great systems.
I
The
have a
one
question for
thing,
you.
oh
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'd rather do the question.
Yeah, so because we have a small space, we had a really hard time deciding between putting an extra bed and a glider.
Hmm.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that and what you advise people to do if you have to pick one or the other given space constraints and you don't have another guest room or for someone else
Hmm.
to
So
sleep.
your extra bed would function as a guest
Yeah,
space.
in the nursery, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's up to, I mean, it depends on your lifestyle. Like, do you often have people you want to come stay with you? Do you even want people to come stay with you while you have a new baby? Um, they're just things to consider. But I would say that most people love gliders, and they're probably the thing that I get the most comments about, like, oh, I couldn't live without my glider. But that said, you can always, the things that you do in your glider, you can do them elsewhere.
Mm.
And you could even do them in that bed that you would put in the space. So I don't know that I can recommend exactly one or the other for each person, but it's kind of just a lifestyle preference, if that makes sense. What do you have now?
So we went with the bed.
Okay.
Because we were planning on having my mother-in-law and my mom come at the beginning to stay for like a week at a time to help out. And we
Hmm.
didn't want to be putting them on the couch when they were coming to help for a week.
Okay.
So we went with the bed, but I've seen this debate come up a lot. And I'm like, am I missing something with the glider? And I feel like it's been okay. It's been because we've just sat on the bed for story time and when I was nursing,
Hmm.
it worked okay, but I don't know if I'm missing something.
I mean, maybe, but
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt you if you don't know, right?
Yes.
But one thing that I do with some clients, especially ones who they know that they're having a guest or a care provider coming in the beginning, but they just don't have the space, is we'll do the roll away bed. So those kind of collapse
Mhm.
and fold up. They're not the most comfortable thing in the world, but they work and they can be pushed out of the way. Um, I don't know what your storage situation is, but
Yeah, not great.
sometimes they'll even just fit in a closet. So, or even fancy futon, it just depends on what your guests are going to be okay with.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so hard. There are no other questions in the chat right now, but I have another one if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, what are your thoughts on best practices if you're then incorporating a second kid into the nursery space? So say you only have one room and then
Hmm.
you have a toddler and then eventually you want to put the next kid in there. What are kind of best practices with how to set it up or like two
Yes,
cribs?
so
How does it all work?
the biggest issue that I always say is the kind of the primary is safety for both children. And because they have different needs, how old is the toddler at that point? Oh, you said he's about one.
Yeah, yeah. Someone said that was their question too. They have a 1-year-old and I have a 1-year-old.
Okay. So, depending on the age of the toddler, if they're old enough to understand, if you can talk to them that a new baby is coming, having that conversation really early and then repeating it over and over and making sure they understand that their space is going to be shared soon. That's definitely one tip. But as far as the safety goes, you're going to want to make sure that the toddler understands, if possible, that they're not to get out of their bed and go touch the baby or do things or pull things down. Um, you'll want to definitely monitor that situation closely in the beginning because there's curiosity and they don't understand what's safe and what's not. Um, moving toys out into a different space is also good because you don't want a toddler playing with Legos in a space where a baby can swallow one. Um, so kind of keeping the space as minimal as you can and moving all of that shared activity to a space where you can supervise, and then continually monitoring and continually having those conversations if they're old enough, so they understand what to do and what not to do. But it is tricky. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's an adjustment there for everybody.
Those are really good tips though about moving the toys out because I feel like now so many toys have moved in that I wouldn't even think about.
Uh-huh.
Now. And with the toddler then wanting to touch the baby, I wouldn't even think about that too. Or put like their stuffed animal in the baby's crib or
Exactly. You don't want them putting, that's why I like to, if you take those things out of the room,
yeah.
then they won't, in theory, have as much temptation to go, oh, they want my teddy and give,
Yeah, they
put a
put
teddy bear in
comfort
the
them.
crib. And but again, if you can talk to them about why that's not okay and etc. So it just, if you're dealing with somebody who can't understand yet, then that's a different story. But again, it's going to come down to monitoring and really paying close attention to their behavior, and trying to prep them in any way that you can.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
tip. Thank you.
Yeah.
No other questions right now. I did also,
Okay.
I'm so appreciative of you mentioning the hybrid changing pad. I feel like that's something that's going to be so helpful. Because
It's really cool.
yeah,
Yeah. It's a newer product and they're not available everywhere.
okay.
I think, as far as I know, I've only seen the one brand right now that makes it, the Gilded Bird. But they come printed. So it looks like a foam pad, but it's printed. And so instead of putting a fabric cover on it, it just has an innate pattern, if that
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I have one in my
yeah.
garage. I was testing it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because we have the
Yeah.
peanut one, and I didn't even think about
Uh-huh.
it. Then my mother-in-law, when she was here, she's like, "It's so cold on her." I was like, "I think it's fine." Like I think they always cry during changes, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
And then the funny thing though is the solution to that is putting a liner down. But
exactly.
then you end up with laundry, which is the same problem that the foam pads had in the first
Exactly.
place. So there's always
Exactly.
laundry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. This was really great.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll send that out via PDF. Hopefully, I'll send it to Auggie so they can send it out.
Yep. Yeah. Anyone who joined
Yeah.
or RSVP'd will get a recording and the notes in the PDF. Should work out.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining.